grab your horseshoes and a six-gun, because today we re-off to the frontier for some Wild West history. From outlaws to the perils of pioneer life, here are 6 dark secrets of the Wild West. No. 6. The Civil War created the Wild West. There's no denying it. Without the Civil War, the American frontier might have looked very different. And while it's difficult to imagine the Old West without cowboys and cattle hands roaming free, that iconic look was actually born from the war between the states. After the Civil War ended, the U.S. government reduced its army from 400,000 men to just 70,000. The soldiers who were let go needed jobs and a way to put food on the table for their families. So many turned to ranching or became cowboys working for large ranches. These former soldiers brought with them military skills and tactics which they would use to wrangle cattle, drive herds, and protect their employers' property. Ranching became a competitive business as more and more people arrived in the West looking for work or land. By 1883, there were over 9,000 ranches in Texas alone, and this boom created an entirely new culture of cowboys, cattle hands, lawmen, and outlaws. The Wild West was officially born, but violence was never far behind. In the late 1800s, Texas had one sheriff for every 250,000 residents, whereas New York had one for every 18,000 people, and there were plenty of crimes committed in the lawless towns. Stagecoach robberies, train holdups, and jailbreaks were all popular pastimes, and a sheriff's badge didn't mean much if you were in Dodge City. 5. The most notorious outlaw was an African American. When you think of the most notorious outlaws of the Wild West, you probably think of names like Billy the Kid, Jesse James, or Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. But what if we told you that the most wanted criminal in the West wasn't even black? Meet Black Bart, aka Charles Bowles. Charles was born into slavery but purchased his freedom for $100 in 1852. He moved to California during the gold rush and started working as a stagecoach driver. But when he learned that his sister had been sold back into slavery, he robbed his first stagecoach and made his escape. Over the next decade, he would rob hundreds of stagecoaches, trains, and even banks. Charles was never caught and died a wealthy man in 1909. Authorities never even recovered his real name until decades after his death. To this day, he is still the only outlaw whose crimes inspired a song by Johnny Cash. Number 4. You had better watch your back. Imagine walking down the street and suddenly being shot in the back. It might sound like something that would happen in a gang-ridden neighborhood today, but it could also have happened to you in the Wild West. People in the western frontier lived in constant fear of someone drawing a gun and firing. Law enforcement officers were few and far between, and trials were so slow that they were often avoided altogether. Justice was swift and violent in the Old West. It was common for sheriffs to hang people rather than take them to court, and vigilantes weren't above taking the law into their own hands. If you were accused of a crime, your fate was usually decided before you even had a chance to defend yourself. No. 3. Women faced even greater dangers than men. The days of the Wild West were not easy for women. On top of facing discrimination and limited rights, they also had to deal with double standards and danger at every turn. A woman could be arrested for kissing a man in some states, while in others she could only be punished if she initiated the kiss. As for the dangers of frontier life, well, just ask Helen Viola. She was the first woman to be lynched in the United States, and her crime was simply having an affair with a white man while living on the Cherokee Nation reservation. Then there was the infamous case of Babyface Nelson's gang, who robbed a train carrying payroll for federal Indian agents in Kansas. They killed everyone on board except for one young woman. They tied her up and left her for dead, but she survived and eventually identified the gang members, leading to a shootout with police in which all of the outlaws were killed. Despite the odds being stacked against them, though, many women forged ahead and made their mark on the Wild West. Stagecoach driver Pearl Hart was one of the few women to successfully rob a stagecoach. While Calamity Jane may have been a bit of a legend, but she was certainly a force to be reckoned with. Number doors, frontier life was hard and short. Being an average citizen in the Wild West meant you likely lived in a small village or town, farmed the land, or tried your hand at mining. Just don't expect to get rich quick. About 90% of miners never struck it big, and many lost their lives trying. Diseases like cholera and smallpox ran rampant through the frontier, killing thousands. But the biggest killer of all was the elements. Winters were harsh, and supplies were often scarce. That made it difficult for settlers to grow crops or raise livestock. And if you didn't have enough food or water, you might not make it through the winter alive. All of these hardships led to a very high mortality rate in the western frontier. In fact, only about half of all pioneers would survive to see their 40s. And if you did live past 40, you were considered an elder. This meant that pioneer children were often forced to grow up quickly and take on responsibilities that other kids do unusually face, such as helping to bury family members who died. 1. There were secret societies everywhere. Fear was a way of life in the Old West. And it wasn't just fear of criminals or outlaws. Many people feared secret societies, operating in plain sight. One of the most infamous was the Order of the Solar Temple, also known as the Order of the Black Dragon, or simply the Order. Its origins are shrouded in mystery, but it is believed that the group formed in Louisiana around 1846. Members of the Order were said to come from all walks of life, including lawyers, doctors, politicians, and even priests. But they were united by their belief in the occult and their willingness to do whatever it took to achieve their goals. While the Order's ultimate goal remains unknown, their methods were often brutal and involved murder, arson, and even human sacrifice. At its peak, the Order was said to have tens of thousands of members across the United States and Europe. But as the years went on, the group became increasingly secretive and eventually disappeared altogether. While there's no evidence that the Order still exists today, some believe that its legacy lives on in other secret societies and cults. With all this talk of secret societies, you'll probably want to watch our other video on the Freemasons. Just click right over here and we'll catch you in the next one.